let me show you how do we test. So till now we have been testing in Oracle Enterprise Manager, right? So we go to the SOA partition or whatever partition we usually deploy. Okay, so I'll just log into EM first. I've already started the service just to save some time.
Could you share your desktop?
Oh, am I not showing? I'm sorry. Okay, you should see the screen now.
Yes.
Okay. So usually, how did we test till now? We went to Oracle Enterprise Manager, went to the SOA infra, and then whatever partition you have deployed, you just click on that, and here you click on the test button, right? So this is how you do it. But ideally, but usually we don't do it here. Why? Because one of the main reasons is, get something is done. Okay, one reason is since this is a very small, something got matched up, I think. Okay. Okay, it is this one, right? Yeah, got it. So we go here. Let me start. We go here and we just give our input, and then we are done, right? Since this is a very small XML, you can actually type in, but let's say it's a very huge XML having different schemas, a very complex structure, then it would be very hard for you to write down everything here. And that too, and if someone wants to test the application, if your testing team wants to test this application, obviously this one would be like more technical for them, right? So how we do it is using something called SOAP UI. Okay, so this is kind of a universally accepted or maybe de facto testing tool. Okay, so using this we do our testing. So using SOAP UI is damn simple. Okay, SOAP UI gives you many options like writing automated test scripts, etc., which is all the QA's work. But as a consultant, we basically just use it for testing. Okay, so how do we test using SOAP UI? See, the whole thing starts with the WSDL, right? So when you click on anything, you get a WSDL URL. So you can actually check it first. So I'm just replacing this with localhost. Okay, yeah, it is working. See, if you look at this, the port number is 7003. Okay, whereas my EM port number is 7001. So what is the 7003? This is the managed server. We are deploying all our SOA applications to the managed server, right? See, even though you are using 7001 in your JDeveloper to connect and deploy, you are basically deploying it to the managed server. Okay, so my WSDL is working. How do I test? Just right click on this, say new SOAP project, or I would say project name is, what is the project name? You can give the same project, you can give any name, or I would say mediator samples. Okay, I can give any name and just give the WSDL and say okay. Okay, so it will go to the WSDL, and based on the WSDL, it will automatically create a request for you, a sample request. Okay, so just double click on this to open the request. It gives the XML with all the placeholders. So maybe I can say my first name is Ravi and say last name is Kiran, and when you just click on this button, okay, you get the result. So it's so simple. Okay, so from now onwards, we will do all our testing on SOAP UI. I just wanted to show you this, and I wanted to show you another one. From now onwards, like whatever examples that we do in our local, I will send the jar files along with the presentations and recordings. Okay, so just in case if you are finding some trouble redoing the stuff, or if you want to look at the example what we have done, because yesterday we have done XSLT, right? At this point you would be not so familiar with XSLT, so you want to check the project. So in that case, how you will actually import a project. Okay, so let me show you that. Even that is very simple. Okay, so you have to go to your project root folder. Okay, if you don't know where is the root folder, just go to edit, copy path, okay, and paste it in the browser. Just remove the last one, and this is your source path of your project. Okay, so your source path of the project has two folders. One is SOA and one is deploy. So this SOA folder contains literally everything that you are writing in your application. Okay, and under the deploy folder, you'll have all the jars. Yesterday, if you remember, revision 1.0 was the basic application, and revision 1.1 had the fault handling, right? So you have, you have a jar file for each and every version. Okay, so let's say I give you this sample, okay, and I wanted to import this. So how do I import? Since I already have it here, let me create a new application just for showing you guys. Okay, so in your app, you can actually do it here itself, but I just wanted to do it here. So import application. This is a temp application for me. Okay, and whenever you're creating a project, create with the same name. Okay, in this case, it's Hello World Mediator, right? Or let me not do it here. Okay, I'll just say some finish it off. It will create me this project. I don't want this, so maybe I'll delete this. I'll delete the default project. Okay, so my application is clean now. Now I'll show you how to import. So in order to import, you need to create a project, a SOA project. Okay, just go to SOA tire SOA project and give the same name as jar file. So what is jar file? Hello World Mediator. You trim off the left and right parts. So I would say Hello World Mediator. Okay, and then say next and finish it off. So it gives me an empty template. Now what you do is go on this and say file import. Okay, and here in the import there should be something called SOA archive into SOA project. Okay, so basically I'm importing the SOA archive, which is nothing but a jar file into project. Okay, and what is the composite archive? I'll browse. So you will put that somewhere in a folder, right? So let me go to that. I'm sorry. Where is that? Hello world. Okay, let me copy path. This is much better. Okay, so I'm doing it again. File, import, SOA archive into SOA project, and let me browse the jar file. Let us deploy 1.1 version, or let us import 1.1 version. Okay, composite name is Hello World Mediator, and finish it off. Okay, so when you finish it off, that jar file is actually imported in your project. Okay, so now you have the project, and if you just wanted to check whatever you want, you can do it. Okay, maybe I want to check the XML that I've written yesterday. Okay, so you can just see here. See, yesterday I've written it, I've basically typed it yesterday, right? Since I already am familiar with it, I can type. But if you are not really familiar, you have all the functions here. Okay, it's very easy to do. Like you just drag and drop a if condition and then do a, write down the condition, etc. Since I'm claiming, XSLT is a very powerful language. Okay, so at this point in time, it is not at all related to SOA. It is basically a language used for all the transformations, okay, and styling. Basically, it is like a CSS to how CSS is to HTML, XSLT is to XML. Okay, so it basically does all the styling things for your XML. Okay, so whenever you have time, not only for SOA, it is helpful in literally any project. Okay, better you spend some time on XSLT, because when you are in full-fledged projects, XSLT is one of the major things that you will be using. Okay, and most people don't know much about XSLT, so it would be a real asset for you if you concentrate on that. Initially, it would be really confusing, but it's very easy language, believe me. Okay, so I wanted to show you these two, like testing in SOAP UI and importing the jar before we start the session. Okay, now that I've shown you, you can just refer to it if you have any questions. Okay, I'm just closing the application because it is temp. Won't confuse you. Okay, we are back to our application. So let's see what we'll do today. Okay, so in Mediator, we have done most of the basics, not even basics, we have done most of the things that a Mediator covers. Okay, so we haven't done events because events we will do it when we do the event-driven architecture. Okay, so enough of Mediators, please jump into the next component. Okay, so don't concentrate on the left side part, just concentrate on the component here. Okay, this is the components palette, right? Okay. Now after the Mediator, we are done with the Mediator. Next thing in our topic is adapters. Okay. So what is an adapter? Okay, let me open a screen. Just a moment. Okay, what is an adapter? So let's understand what is an adapter. Usually, the whole purpose of your SOA application is to integrate different services, right? And the services could be in different technologies. Okay, it could be a Java application that you're talking to, an XML web service, or it could be a JMS, or it could be AQ, or literally any application in the world you want to integrate as part of your SOA application, right? So yesterday, what did we do? Like we had some web service that is hosted externally, okay, like a currency conversion web service. So what did we do? We have actually created a SOA application which will talk to the external web service. How did we do? We just created a reference which basically points to this external service, okay? But to your SOA application, always a web service endpoint is starting point. So that's the reason why we have created a web service endpoint. Okay, so I would say this is a service client because you are exposing it to all your clients. So all your consumers will directly access this one. Okay, all your consumers cannot access to your references or cannot access to your components. So we had a mediator. Why did we have a mediator? Because you cannot directly connect a web service client to a reference. This is not at all possible. So you need a mediator. You can have any other component like BPEL also, but since we will do it later, okay? So we have done something like this, correct? So yesterday we were talking to something called a SOAP web service, correct? So this one is basically a SOAP web service. Okay, we are fine. But what if you want to talk to a JMS? There would be a JMS queue where you want to put a message, okay? Or you want to write a file to a file system. This could be another requirement, or you want to write a message into a AQ, okay, advanced queue. That could be a requirement, or you want to talk to Salesforce, okay. So Salesforce is a CRM application where you wanted to talk to, which is hosted in cloud, or you want to talk to a JDA system. So you will have any number of requirements asking you to connect to different kinds of technologies, correct? But if I want to connect something to a cloud, I need to understand all the concepts behind connecting to the cloud, right? But as a SOA developer, my only work is to write the integrating logic, okay? So I'm not supposed to know all those technologies. Or let's say I'm asked to connect to JDE, okay? So I don't know how to connect to JDE. If I have all the data, I can actually manipulate it, but how do I connect to JDE? Like, no one has knowledge on everything, right? So for that reason, Oracle SOA Suite 11G has basically created a wrapper against each of the technologies, okay? So if you want to talk to a JMS queue, you will have a JMS wrapper built, okay? And this JMS wrapper is nothing but a web service, okay? So if it is a web service, you can directly call it, right? It's as simple as that. Similarly, you'll have an adapter for JDE, you'll have an adapter for Salesforce, you'll have an adapter file system, okay? So literally, Oracle SOA Suite has provided wrappers to most of the commonly used technologies, and those wrappers are nothing but adapters. Okay, so the technical or the terminology for those wrappers is nothing but adapter. So if you see here, there are different technologies. If you want to talk to a ADF business component, you can use this wrapper. Okay. If you want to talk to an AQ, you just drag and drop this AQ adapter, and then you configure your AQ details, or you give your AQ details within this adapter. Okay. Then this adapter will take care of all the transformations, and then the protocol transformations, etc. And then it will do your work. Okay. So your work, you will concentrate only on the business logic, and all the boilerplate code would be actually handled by these wrappers. Okay. So today what we will do is we will work on the file adapter. Okay. So what is a file adapter? Basically, if you want to write any files to a folder, or if you want to work with your file system, since file system works, I mean, it talks in a different language, right? We don't know, like the OS talks file system in a different language, and we don't know, but we can still talk to the file system using this wrapper, which is called a file adapter. Okay. So let us straight away do the example. We'll look at the presentation tomorrow after doing a couple of examples. Okay. So for today, let us straight away do the example. So what would be the example? Example would be very, very simple example. Okay, let me tell you a real world scenario where file adapters are used. You might think like, why does SOA application wants to talk to a file system? Okay, let's say my company has two different ERP systems. Okay, or maybe my company has different divisions. Okay, and I recently acquired a purchasing company. Okay, so there is another company which is kind of #1 in purchasing systems. Okay, and I acquired that company. So that company would have ERP for the purchasing. Okay? Let's say this is purchasing system. Okay, so this is ERP inside technology. I don't know what word. Okay, and then similarly, maybe I acquire another division which is #1 in procurement. Okay, so it already has a well-established procurement system which I don't want to disturb. Okay. Now, since both these divisions are part of my company, I want to send the details from here to here, right? Because someone would create a PO, and then that PO would go to the procurement system, which basically tells you the product, right? It procures the product. Okay. So in this case, I want to integrate both these systems. But since these two ERPs are on different technologies, so the reason that they're from two different companies, they would have used their own ERPs, right? Even if it is your company only, one ERP could be Oracle and the other ERP could be SAP. Okay, so there is no straight, there is no seamless support, seamless communication happening because both follow different technologies. Okay, in this case, so ideally what happens is this guy, once the whole purchase order is created, he will put the purchase order in the form of a file in a particular location. Okay, and then the procurement system will basically pull on that particular directory, pulling in the sense it basically reads all the files that are created in this directory. Okay, so it is this way, and then it starts the procurement process. Okay, so this is one real life example, real project example, wherein you want to deal with files. Okay, so let's see how this is done. In our example, what we will do is we'll create a purchase requisition. Okay, I'll keep the purchase requisition very simple because the whole purpose is to understand the concept, not the purchasing thing, right? So let me close everything. Okay, leave it. So what we'll do is we'll create a PO, okay, through a web service, and through a web service, the SOA composite will write this PO into a file system. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll expose a web service through which any person can create a purchase order. Okay, so what should be the inputs? The input should be, let's say, PO number, and then say product name, product description, and say price. Okay, so let's say this is the input. And what is that the other system is expecting? The other system is expecting second system. So if the other system is expecting, in the sense, basically the file has to be of that format, because the other system reads from the file, right? So my output, or maybe I shouldn't say output, but my file structure should be something like this, wherein it has a PO number. Just to do some transformations, because yesterday we have seen number of inputs are same as number of outputs, right? So in this case, we will do some transformations. Okay, so we'll have product name, and then we'll have final price, wherein the logic for the final price is, if incoming price is less than 10%, okay, give a discount of 10%. If greater than 10,000, give a discount of say 8%. Okay, just to do some summation. I'll say some notes. Okay, so this will be my input, and this will be the format of this file system. Okay, and let's say the file directory where we wanted to put is something. So policy working files. Okay, I would say it was the batch one. Just stop me where if you're not following anything, or if I'm a little faster. So this is the folder file directory. Okay, so basically I will just format. We are dealing with it because SOA has given us the required adapters or wrappers. So let me open this project. What is the first thing for any project? You need to define the schema, right? So let's define the schema. Open the shared artifacts. You can actually create the schema in your project only and publish to MDS. We'll do that then. So I will create a new SOA project. Okay, SOA project, and say file adapter example. You can give a appropriate name. Say finish it off. Okay, and then the first thing that I wanted to do is create a schema. Okay, so new XML schema, and then I would say purchasing schema. Okay. So what is my input? I would say PO request, which has 4 elements, right? So element 1, then element 2. Never use a space. It's always not a good thing to use a space. You can use it, but I would never recommend anyone to do that. PO number and say product name, product description, and always use init caps. Okay, so every first letter in the word should be capped. That's a standard, that's all, not compulsory. And what is the other one? Price. I would say initial price, just to avoid some confusion. And then price would be, say, double. Okay. Now you would think like, why will the customer give the price? But just for our example, okay. PO number would be integer. So this will be my request format. what will be my response format. Let me copy paste the same thing. I cannot do that. I'll create another one. I would say file format type. From tomorrow onwards, what I'll do is, for that day's example, I'll create so that we'll save some time. Okay, what is your number product name? We'll have the session exactly for 1 hour today. Okay, so I have my request and I have the file format file. Okay, so basically the file adapter would use this one. Like yesterday as we discussed, we don't want anything to be in our local, right? We wanted to expose everything to ADF. Okay, so just check the ADF config file to see. Because there is a bug in 12c, and even in 11c I know how it happened, but in 12c, this one, it always gets overridden. So always once it gets overridden, just do it again. You copy paste it again. Okay, so this is basically the connection for your MDS. Okay. Yeah, I have the ADF config. Let me check MDS and refresh it. Okay, these are all.
Ravi, is power.
Ravi, your voice is breaking.
Your voice is breaking.
How is it? Since long time or just now?
It's coming from the past 1 year. It's not continuous, but sometimes it's breaking.
Oh, okay. Maybe.
It's from last 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh my God. Okay. Well, let me try to connect through the system. First, it gave me trouble. Let me see. Let me first of all pause the recording. Okay. So I have the schema which I wanted to publish to MDS. So just check your ADF config to see if everything is there properly. Yeah, it is there. So just right click and say share using design template repository, and where you want to share. Maybe I'll create a new folder called share schemas. Okay, and I would use this folder to publish it and say finish it. Okay, just to check, you just refresh your MDS connection and see, yeah, it is there, shared schema. Okay, and one thing you have to remember is, if you are looking at the MDS, you cannot edit it. Like, you cannot edit it because it is coming from the database. Okay, and the moment you publish it, it has disappeared from your local. Yep.
Ravi, one small question. Let us assume we are pushing database schema to the MDS, right? So what happens if there are 7 to 8 developers working on different schemas, right? For one particular environment, so they will push all their schemas to MDS.
Correct.
What happens if we want to move their code to QA and other environments?
Okay, so that's a good question. I mean, MDS would be the single source of truth for all the schemas. That point you're clear, right? So once in your development environment, once you have identified all the schemas to be published, okay, so you will basically create a jar file and give it to the admin guy. The first step that he will do in the environment is publish your MDS. Okay, because you have to have all the schemas before deploying the application, right? So he will deploy it to the next environment, and then he will deploy all the applications. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the moment we publish it, it is not here, so that even if we want to use it locally, we cannot do that. Okay, so let me open this. Oh, so how does my composite look like now? Where is it? One second. Okay, my composite would now look something like this. We'll have a web service client which accepts the request. Okay, and then we will be, our aim is to write a file to a file system, right? So we will have a file adapter. Okay, and this would be a web service. We'll have a file adapter which basically connects to my OS, and through the OS it will connect to the file directory and do all the stuff. Okay, and since these two guys cannot directly do things, we need a mediator. Okay, so we will drag and drop a mediator and we'll connect this guy. And is it a synchronous or an asynchronous or a one way? It would be one way, right? Because you have accepting the request and you're writing it to a file. So it would be a one way request. So in your mediator, it would be a one way request. So let us do it one after the other. So first what we will do, we will configure the file adapter. Okay, so see, you have to observe that this file adapter does nothing unless you tell it what to do. Okay, so it will just assist you in talking to its underlying components. Okay, in the case of file adapter, it assists you in talking to the file system. But what file to write, what is the format, and where is the directory where you want to write the file, all these things you have to supply it. Okay, otherwise it won't know it, right? Because each project has its own requirement. So even in our case, when I drag and drop, the file adapter will ask me various things. Okay, first thing is the name. So I would say file write service, as simple as this, or I would say PO write service. Okay, purchase order write service, and define from operation and schema. Okay, and then you just leave the JNDA name for the, right now. I won't explain this because tomorrow in database adapter I'll explain you this. And now this file adapter does various things, like it can read a file, it can write a file, it can do a synchronous read. Synchronous read is something like this. Suppose you have a file where the file, where some system is continuously writing to the file. Okay, so as and when something is written to the same file, you want to read something, you want to read it, then you have to do a continuous reading, which is a synchronous read. And if you want to list all the files in a folder, you can use list files. Or if your file is like in gigabytes, okay, usually the log files would be in gigabytes, right? If your file is in gigabytes and you wanted to read it, like, it would be very tough, right? Instead, you can actually break the file into multiple chunks, and if you process it, it will be much faster. So for that, you can use a chunk tree. So in this case, we want to write a file. So just click on this operation, then say next. Okay, now it asks me the basic things like where you want to write the file. Is it a physical path or a logical name? Logical name we'll see in a moment. So I'm saying the physical path, and what is the path? This is my file directory where, or maybe I'll create another one called file, I would say PO file service files. Okay, so let me give this directory, and then the file naming convention. Okay, what should be the file naming convention? In this case, I would say purchase order underscore. Okay, now first, when I trigger the web service for the first time, it will create me a file. Okay, so when I trigger the service for the second time, it again creates a file, and if I use the same name, it basically overwrites it, right? So to avoid that, I can actually suffix it with one of these options. Like if I say sequence, then every new file will have a new number, or you can even give a time stamp. Okay, so I would give a sequence and say XML. Okay, and then say next, and then you have various configuration options which are self-explanatory. Like if you want to append to the same file instead of creating a new one, you can do it, or when you want to write the file after one trigger or maybe after 3 or 4 triggers. So all these would be in the documentation, very easy to see, self-explanatory. Okay, now what is the schema? See, though we are talking to different systems like a file or a database or a JMS, whatever it is, in SOA we are always dealing with only one thing called XML, right? So in this case, what is the type in which you want to write? We already defined the type, right, which is in MDS. So I click on this. Earlier, if you remember, you clicked on project schema files and you had a schema file where you selected, but now it is in MDS. How do you read from an MDS? It's very simple. You just click on this which says import schema file, and here if you see there is file system where I can, if it is a file system, I can do it, but in this case it is an MDS, right? So I have SOA MDS here. Just click on that, and when you expand, what happened? Let me check my ADF config. Maybe it would have again corrupted. Yep, if you see, it has again corrupted. There could be a solution here. There will be a solution. Maybe a patch. Since this is a new installation, I don't have the patch. It's the same thing. Oh, we need to do again. File adapter. Say. Service. Next. Say write operation. Okay. And then direct. I'm sorry. Okay, I would say PO underscore sequence dot XML, and then get it from the MDS. Okay, so shade schema. So this is my schema. What is the format? I wanted to write in the file format type, and say next and finish it up. Okay. So now I have a file adapter which talks to this, which talks to my operating system and creates a file of my choice. I already have written the already defined the schema, right? Okay, what is my next thing? My next thing is to create a web service reference. So I will, because all your SOA composites are exposed to a web service, right? So just drag and drop a SOAP web service. I would say it has PO write service underscore client. Okay, and you don't have a WSDL. Maybe in one of the examples we'll actually create a WSDL and see how we do that. But for now, sorry, it is not WSDL user, it is a schema. So second option. So PO write service, it is a one-way service. And then what is the request type? We just click on this, same thing. So MDS, shade schema, purchasing schema, and then PO request. Okay, so I basically, instead of doing it from the local schema, I do it from the MDS. And then what is the next thing? The next thing is, I cannot directly connect these two. I need a mediator. So I'll drag and drop a mediator. I would say PO underscore mediator. You can give any names. Actually, you need to give very appropriate names, because since we are doing the simple examples, I'm giving the name roughly, but in your project you would have like 5-6 mediators and like n number of clients. So always give it appropriately. Usually each project will have its own standard naming convention you need to follow. Okay, and then just wire them. Okay, once you wire them, like what will happen? Okay, so Tommy asked me, I would assume the file name to be customized with anything, not limited to the sequence. That is correct. Like you have all these options defined, right? Like the timestamp and those things, but you can also write, you can extend the adapter to have your own convention. It is possible. Okay, so what happened now? Okay, so I have this web service. Okay, so if someone calls me, why am I not able to write it again? Okay, some reason the pen is not working. But anyways, so here if someone calls your web service, it goes to the mediator left part. Okay, I would say to the mediator source. Okay, and then there is whatever is there in the mediator target would go to the file write service, which finally writes the file. Now it is your duty to connect your source to the destination of your mediator. How would you do that? Using the routing rule. Since you have already wired, the routing rule has already come up. So you just click on the transformation and then give a proper name to this. I'm just leaving it as it is and say OK. So here is my request, here is my response, and these two are completely different. Okay, so PO number I can map directly, product name I can map directly. Now what is the final price? For calculating the final price, there is a logic. So it is, if it is less than 10,000, then it is 0.9% of the actual price, right? Discount is 10%. Otherwise, it is 0.92. So we need to write an XSLT. How would you do that? I can directly write it, or you can just click on here. You can say if okay, I would say if your initial price, and then go here in the source. Okay, if test is equal to this one, say less than 10,000. Okay, what you want? Your final price is, so this is not very much matured, so you need to do some tweaking also. So your final price would be into 0.9, which is 90%. Okay, so your final price is my final price double. Let me check that. Oh no, it is changed, it has to be double. Okay, let's see what happens. Like if it doesn't auto box, then we'll have to reconvert it. What happens? Okay, less than is what I'll do. But you know what is the logic, right? So similarly, if greater than 10,000, it would be 0.92. Okay, so it might fail because we have defined our final price as string. It has to be double. But let's see if it automatically auto boxes, or we'll have to redo it. Okay, so I have defined. So my example is done. I'm done. So maybe in the notes, maybe you want to give something. So I would say just say, what should I say? Or maybe just like yesterday, we can actually have something. 8x value, I would say. Okay. So inside this condition only, I can put this and notes is say, I would say you got a discount of 10%. Okay. And similarly, here I would say you got a discount of whatever, 8%. So this will be my transformation, and I'm done. Okay, so I connected all the parts. The only thing I need to do, okay, so just deploy this to the application server. Okay, in the next example, you will see what is configuration plan. I would say batch policy. This might fail. I'm guessing it will fail, but let's see. Data box is not. Meanwhile, I want to check something. Okay. Okay, it is deployed. So what I will do is we'll test it using the SOAP UI. See, I have got something which I deployed. So if you want to undeploy something, just right click on this, so deployment and undeploy. Okay. So I want to test file adapter. I can directly test it from here, or maybe I can even use a SOAP UI. Okay, so let's do it from here for first. So what is the PO number? I would say 123. What is the product name? Or the sample product, and then description I would say that this is a sample product. Then here I'll give it as 200. So test web service. Now since this is a one-way web service, okay, it's a fire and forget. Okay, so basically you give the request, it goes to your mediator and here and writes a file. You don't get anything. That is the reason why you didn't get a response even in PM, but you can always click on the launch protest to see what happened. So I can click on the mediator and see if it worked or not. Did it work? Of course it worked. Okay, so it auto paused. Okay, so since it is how much? 1000. Since it is 200, which is less than 10,000, I got a discount of 10%. Okay, and then it did not give me any error, which means it would have written a file. Here it is, PO underscore sequence, which started with 1. And when I see here, edit, or let me open it in that. All this is the header, but if it is not proper, you can always go to SOAP UI, just give it and say right click format. Okay, so that you can read it properly. Okay, my PO number, product name, final price is this one, and notes is this. Okay, so you have basically written a file. Okay, so basically you have talked to your file system to Oracle SOA. Okay, now let's enhance. So any questions till now? Okay, am I audible? Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Ravi, you are audible.
Okay, fine. So let's enhance this project a little more, make it a little complicated. So now we are good, like we know how to write files. So similarly, how to read also would be almost similar, which I will leave it to you so that you can do it yourself. You will understand a little more. Okay, and it is also there in my blog file reading service, so you can always refer to that. But let's enhance this. Okay, now I am good. You might have a doubt. See, we are talking to a file system, right? So this is a physical location. Okay, but let's say this is my dev environment. Okay, I have it in my local. What about QA environment? QA would be on Linux server. So obviously this file format, it's not possible in Linux, right? Or I mean, I would promote this code into different environments depending on, depending on the day. Like I would go to SIT, then UAT, then pre-prod, and then production, right? So for each of these environments, I'll have a different file structure. Okay. So how do we cope up with this? One thing is, you can go to the file adapter. But before every deployment, you go and change it here. Okay, and then deploy it. But it is absolutely no one will allow it, because I mean you cannot modify your files before sending it to a new environment, right? So how would you do it? The way that you, I mean, in this case, our requirement is basically to change this particular directory based on the environment, correct? So how would you do that? The way you do it is, instead of the physical path, I will select something called a logical name and give a logical name. I would say file directory, give some logical name for POs. Okay, and then I didn't make any other changes, just finish it off. Now it is your duty to substitute this string with an appropriate folder location based on the environment. How would you do it? You would do it with a concept called configuration files. Okay, now what is a configuration file? Configuration file is basically replaces all the configuration parameters in your project. And why do you need a configuration file? Because the configuration parameters will have different values in different environments. What could be the configuration parameters? Like the database connection details. Each environment will have a different value, or the file directory in this example itself. Each environment will have a separate value. Okay, or even let's say I'm polling a database. So in dev I want to poll it every 10 minutes, but in production I want to poll every 1 hour. Okay, so all these are some examples where I want to have different values in different environments, and for that purpose we will use something called configuration file. How do you write a configuration file? Very easy. Just click on the composite, right click on it and say generate config plan. Okay, and it will ask for a config plan. Let me give it _dev. Okay, so this will be my dev config plan. So while generating, it will basically parse through all your components and list out whatever are configurable. Okay, so in our case, this one, see, this property is configurable, right? Because we have given it as a logical path, so it is configurable. So it gave me, and it is asking me what to replace. So in my dev directory, let's say in my dev, I'm using POWrite. I'm using this directory, so I will use this. Okay, and then save it. And how will your dev environment know that you want to use this? Or maybe I'll create another config file for my SIT environment also. So I will do the same thing again and say SIT. Okay, and maybe my SIT folder is little different. I'll create a temp folder here, say temp _ SIT. In SIT I want to put it here. So same thing, just go to that particular location, replace this one. Okay, as simple as this. Now when you are deploying to your dev environment, you will select the dev config file. So just click on this, say next. So here you have something called configuration plan. Okay, so let's assume that I'm deploying to dev. So I'll select the dev config plan. Revision is 1.1 because 1.0 is my previous version. I don't want to override it. Say next, select, finish it off. Okay, so my dev, just to remember, my dev application is revision 1.1. Okay, let's say my SIT is revision 1.2. Let us also deploy. Okay, deployment finished. So let me deploy it as a new revision. This time picking the SIT. Okay, I would say 1.2. Say next. In this case, both my dev and SIT are same boxes literally, but you know what I'm actually telling you, right? Okay, deployment finished. So let me go back to the enterprise manager. Why is it not? Okay, what is my dev application? 1.1, right? So let me click on this, say test. I would say PO number 1, 2, 3, some description, and say initial prices. Okay, so it would give me, I would say 12,000. Okay, say test web service. So I have actually triggered 1.1, which is my dev. Okay, and my dev location is this one, right? So see, it has created me a file in this location. which I configured in the dev config file. Okay, so it is 92% of 12,000 since it is greater than 1,000. Okay, so let me trigger 1.2 which I configured to write in a different location. Okay, I'm just giving some sample values. Okay, let's see. It did not create here, but it has actually created in my SID location. Okay, so this is how you use configuration plans to deploy in various environments. Okay, and this also forms one of the basic components of SOA. So yesterday MDS is one thing which is very important, and configuration plans is one thing which is very important, because these things you don't get it in internet. I mean, when you work on the real-time projects, you will get to know about all these things. Okay. So that is about file adapters. Maybe what you want to do is, after you do this example, you try to create a file read example. Okay. So I'll just give you a hint, and based on that you try to do it. If you cannot, you always have my blog where there is an example. Okay. So I'm talking about file read service. So just try to imagine which side it should be. See, all the outbound operations, it is on the right side, right? Okay. When I say file read service, a simple example would be, there is a file, or you can actually use the same file. Okay, there is a file in this location which I want to read, and then maybe I want to manipulate the values in it. Okay, so in this case I want to read the salary and just output the salary. Maybe I want to like multiply it with 1,000 and give it back. Requirement is I mean not important here, but basically let's say you want to read the same file because you already have the schema. You want to read this file, read for an element and write it to another file. Okay, so in this case, how would your composite look like? I am reading a file, so basically my source is a file adapter which is configured to read from a specific location, and then I want to write it to a file, so obviously my destination will also be another file adapter, okay, which is configured to write. Okay, and obviously these two cannot connect to each other, so you put a mediator in between. So this is the example that I want you to do so that you will understand a little more on file adapters. Okay, so that is about file adapter. The other two operations, I mean every operation works the same way literally, and maybe if you want to look into each and every detail of the wizard, okay, so when it comes to interviews, the place where people concentrate is in your wizard. Let me clear it. So usually how the interview questions would be is, let's say in file adapter, usually whatever you don't use, those will be your interview questions, right? Because you don't know what it is. So they will say like, if you want to have only one file and you want to write everything to the only one file, so what would you use? You would say in a file adapter, there's an option called append to file, wherein if I use this, things happen. So basically you want to know each and every detail of this one. Okay, and for this the best source is, there is a documentation for Oracle 12c adapters. Okay, this is a different thing from yesterday. So yesterday for mediators you check on that one, but for files don't go through everything is too much. Like just for files, don't go through FTP also. Files, JMS, database, all these examples we will do in the next coming days, but basically for these three things you refer to this book. Okay, so it gives you very detailed explanation of what each and everything in your adapter wizard means. Okay, so I'll send you the link today, and that's all for today. So let me look at the questions. I will assume the file name. Okay, this is done. Will we cover a flat file in the future? No, we would not cover a flat file in the future, but I can point to your link where there is an example. Okay. What if we have special rules that cannot be provided by out of the box? Okay, I mean, all these, your last question where the polling frequency, there is an there is an already available function here in your JCA adapter which you wanted to change. Okay, so you can check in this. I'm not sure if it is there in file adapter, but it is definitely there in database. Let me see. Okay, so here it is. So in your JCA file, there is something called polling frequency. So usually it would be 1. So instead of 1, you can give a different number, say 300, so that it is 5 minutes. Okay. So where would be that property? So just go to the every adapter will have a JCF. See, okay, let me tell you this. So every adapter is basically a wrapper, which is a web service, right? So every adapter would have a schema and a visitor. So if you go to your schemas, okay, in this case we used it from MDS, right? That's the reason it is not there here, but you will have a visitor. Okay, so here it is, PO write service dot. Where is it? Here it is, PO write service dot visitor, which has only one operation called write. Okay, and apart from that, you would have something called a JCA file. JCA file is the one where all the properties would be mentioned. By default, there would be only few properties, but if you want to have the polling frequency, you can just copy this here and then put it here and say polling frequency is say 500, or say how much is 5 minutes, 300. Now the polling, your file adapter will be polled every. Actually, polling frequency would come only in read operations, not write operations. Okay, so when you do the read file service, which I've asked you to do, you can play with the polling adapter. Okay, so that's the reason why if you go through this sample, you will have different polling things that Oracle Source Code gives you. Okay, or you can just drag and drop. Where is that? Components. You can just drag and drop a file adapter here. Just in next read file. So it has various things, and here you have a polling frequency somewhere. Let's start. Okay, here it is, polling frequency. I would say 300. It's as simple as this. Okay. So that's all, guys. That is about file adapter. Tomorrow we will do an example on database adapter, wherein we will read from a file and then we'll write it to a database. But database adapter is not as simple as this one. For the database adapter, you need to do certain configurations, which is actually a complete administration topic, but I wanted to tell you that thing because we usually do it in the dev environments. Okay, so tomorrow's session would be like 1.5 hours, most probably. So get prepared for that. So maybe before that, if you want to try your file read example, that would be really great. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.